This passage is about China, its Belt and Road initiatives, its lending policies, and its what it has benefited from it and how it has lost. Let's quickly read the passage and summarize before we look at the questions. China's Belt and Road Initiative is the greatest global infrastructure initiative in history. China has lent over $1 trillion to third world countries, becoming a bigger lender than the World Bank, regional development banks, and Western financiers combined. This worries Western countries embroiled in a new Cold War with China. 2 years ago, they planned a rival infrastructure spree to combat BRI. They got nowhere. What's the first passage saying? China has this initiative called Belt and Road Initiative, which the author calls the greatest global infrastructure initiative in history. Because in that project, it lent $1 trillion to third world countries. This amount is more than the amount lent by the World Bank, regional development banks, and Western countries all put together. One country, China, lent more than all these people put together. The Western countries were worried of this huge lending that China was doing and the Belt and Road Initiative, so it came up with its own Belt and Road Initiative. But that did not succeed, right? Second, that is now history. This is what happened some years back, 2 years ago. But now that is history. What is the situation now? Today, BRI is in trouble and lending has been slashed. One foreign affairs columnist called BRI a road and belt to nowhere. Over 60 developing countries face a debt crisis brought on by overborrowing during the heady 2010s. In 2022, 60% of China's overseas loans went to distressed borrowers, up from 5% in 2010. Many cannot repay. What's the situation now? Very different. How is it very different? The Belt and Road Initiative has changed into Belt and Road to nowhere, Road and Belt to nowhere. 60 developing countries which have borrowed from China face a very serious debt crisis due to overborrowing. And in 2022, 60% of China's overseas loans went to distressed borrowers, none of whom are in a position to repay. Right? Pretty bad situation. Since 2013, BRI has been endorsed by 139 countries, including European ones. BRI contracts are typically opaque and the terms secret. Now, since 2013, something strange has been going on. The BRI has been endorsed, supported, oh yeah, this is fine, given support kind of, by 139 countries, which include some European countries. BRI contracts, the contracts that China hands out, are opaque, typically opaque, not transparent. You can't see what's in it. And they are also, the terms of those contracts are secret. You don't know. Just the person who signs it and China knows what's in those contracts. Nobody else knows. They typically carry commercial terms with high interest rates. Concessional lending is a tiny fraction. So the money that China has been lending is at high interest rates. There is no concessional lending. If there is any, it's a very small fraction of the overall money lent. The chief economist of World Bank says that the debt crisis is so bad that a case-by-case approach to debt relief will not work. A wholesale debt write-off is required. The debt crisis is so bad that you need to write off debts en masse, wholesale. Western lenders are willing to listen, but not China. So Western lenders, since the amount they lent is not as much as China, they are willing to write off their loans. But China is not willing to write off the loans. It claims that it has already renegotiated a number of loans. But so it says, no, don't worry. We understand, we're aware of the debt crisis. We have renegotiated the loans. What is the author's worry? But such renegotiation has focused on extending repayment periods at lower interest rates or accepting payment through future commodity sales. And what is future commodity sales? Something which the Western lenders called extortion. China, he's saying, is indulging in extortion in putting in future commodity sales as a clause in the negotiated loans. China has stiffly resisted write-offs. Western lenders are willing, but China says no. Bureaucrats who made such loans fear retribution at home. They fear that they'll feel the backlash at home if they have to write off millions. China's intransigence, stubbornness, rigidness has held up debt relief to many countries, including Pakistan, and has worsened the debt crisis. It's rigid, we have renegotiated loans, we are not going to write them off. The author says China's rigid stance in not writing off debts has only worsened the debt crisis. Hence, BRI today is hitting China's finances and influence too. It's not getting its money back. And so author says the BRI today is affecting China. One, in terms of finance. Second, in terms of its influence. Borrowers love lenders who lend massively with few conditions. If I borrow from you, you give me loan unconditionally, obviously, I love it. So borrowers love lenders who lend massively with few conditions and don't worry about environment, displacement, rehabilitation of people or labor issues, as the World Bank does. So the World Bank, if it gives a loan, these are the terms and conditions. You have to make sure that it doesn't affect any of those sensitive areas. But borrowers love lenders who don't put such conditions. Hence, BRI once helped China win friends. So what can you infer from there? China gave loans unconditionally. It didn't put all these conditions. Okay? So borrowers were very happy with China, and China won friends through its BRI policy of loose lending. But the same borrowers dislike going bust and finding that the big lender resists write-offs. Instead of buying influence, BRI is buying hostility. Now, I've borrowed money from you and you keep asking me to give the money back, you're not going to be a friend. So, borrowers are upset that China is not writing off its debt and it wants its money back. So, earlier, because China lent so much money, borrowers and China were friends. Now, there is hostility between borrowers and China. What are the lessons for India? So first he talks about China's BRI, then he talks about what is the condition of BRI now, what is the situation. After that, the ending is, what are the lessons for India from all this? First, don't worry too much about BRI. Don't worry too much that BRI will give China friends galore. Don't worry that China will have too many friends because of this BRI initiative. For decades after independence, India loved foreign aid but didn't love the US and other donors. Took money, but that didn't necessarily make them love the people who gave them money. That's what. He's got a sarcastic tone here. The second linked lesson is that an aid spree will not win India friends. So India shouldn't go on an aid spree because it's not going to get friends by doing that. India is still a poor country with a savings gap and a current account deficit. So India should provide modest aid to neighbors in distress, like Sri Lanka, to those hit by a tsunami, like Indonesia, those hit by earthquakes, like Syria and Turkey. But not even in theory should it dream of its own BRI. This is the author's advice to India. Third, India must exercise strict diligence in giving foreign loans. It should be really careful while giving foreign loans. Diligence is needed to ascertain the viability not only of the projects but also of the borrower. So if any country wants to borrow money from India saying I want to start this project, it has to be very careful and strict in ascertaining the viability, practicality of the project and the borrower. Can he repay? Is the project going to work? Second, can he repay the money? It has to be very careful on these two fronts. That is the synopsis of this passage. Let's look at the questions now. Question 5. Which of the following cannot be inferred from the passage? Now, cannot be inferred questions often obviously take longer than can be inferred passages. Cannot be inferred means there will be 3 sentences which align with the author's views in the passage, one would not work. So we have to look at that one which does not or cannot be inferred because it's out of scope, it contradicts what the author says, or some other reason, right? Many developing countries are facing a debt crisis due to heavy borrowing from China through the Belt and Road Initiative. True, during the heady days of 2010, they borrowed. Now they can't repay that money. So A can be inferred, it is not our answer. China's reluctance to offer debt relief to heavily indebted countries has led to tension between China and world lenders. Now, you have taken a loan from me. I refuse to write off the loan for you. It might create tension and ill will between you and me. Why would it lead to tension between China and the world lenders? That has not been implied by the passage, so this cannot be inferred. What was the cause of the Cold War between China? A new kind of Cold War, not hot hostilities, but I don't like what they're doing kind of a feeling. The amount that China lent to others, the Western countries started feeling a little insecure, right? But not this, not its reluctance to write off debts. That is not going to, why should it create tension between world lenders and China? It may create tension between the borrowers and China because they are unhappy that China is not writing off the loans. So 2 is the option that cannot be inferred. So B is my correct answer. Question 6. Which of the following statements is incorrect as per the passage? Again, 3 options will be correct according to the passage. 1 will obviously either contradict the passage or be out of scope. Generally, incorrect means it will contradict what has been given in the passage. The World Bank and Western financiers have been losing market share to China's Belt and Road Initiative in lending to third world countries. Correct. China has lent so much money to third world countries, more than the World Bank, regional banks, and everyone put together. So the World Bank and Western financiers don't have people to lend their money. China has already done it. So they are losing market share in terms of that. True. The rivalry between China and Western countries will lead to a new world war. What kind of option is this? Isn't it a sweeping statement? An extreme statement? Has the author said that the rivalry has led them to be embroiled in a Cold War? What is a Cold War? Tensions. We don't like what you're doing. We're trying to outdo you in something or the other. But will they attack each other and hostilities will begin? Has the author implied that? No. This is an extreme option. That is not what the author has implied, not what he has mentioned, so it is not correct as per the passage. Let's quickly look at C and D and see if it aligns with what the author has said. China's BRI contracts are not transparent, they are opaque, charge high interest rates. Yes, it has been mentioned. China has been extending repayment periods and accepting future commodity sales. Yes, which the West calls extortion. So the correct answer is B. B is incorrect as per the passage. Question 7. Which of the following statements, if true, would most weaken the argument that China's Belt and Road Initiative is the greatest global infrastructure initiative in history? The author calls it the greatest global infrastructure initiative in history. How will you weaken it? Where you will show flaws in the BRI, correct? Where you will show negatives that happened or the consequences, that adverse consequences that China had to fare, correct? Many developing countries with high levels of debt have publicly praised the BRI and requested additional funding from China. This strengthens the BRI. This is a positive. This is a point in favor of BRI, so it does not weaken the claim that it's the greatest infrastructure initiative. Western lenders have been able to successfully renegotiate terms of loans made to developing countries. See, China, the Western countries, Western lenders are willing to write off loans. China said no, we'll renegotiate. If Western lenders also renegotiate, it's a point in favor of China, not against. Plus, it actually is not so much weaken the Belt and Road Initiative's greatness. It's just that they are following in the footsteps of China by renegotiating. So then China's policy, strategy and approach in the Belt and Road Initiative is fine. So B also does not weaken it. China's resistance to writing off debts has led to an increase in the number of countries defaulting on their loans, adversely affecting China's economy. So the Belt and Road Initiative has affected China's economy. China's economy is in trouble because of the BRI. Then it weakens the claim that the BRI is the greatest infrastructure initiative. Therefore, my correct answer is C. Correct? You got that right, I hope. It weakens. Which of the following statements best supports the main argument of the passage? Now, let's quickly put the main argument of the passage in our own words. The Belt and Road Initiative initially won China friends. It gave a lot of loans to a lot of third world countries, but it's in trouble now. Those countries are facing a heavy debt crisis. They are in trouble. They're not able to pay back China. China is obviously all this money it has lent, so many trillion dollars. It's having trouble getting it back. So it's affecting its economy and finances. It's also affecting its influence because when it wants its money back, the borrowers are not happy with it. Right? This is the main point, main argument that effectively sums up what the author has said. Let's look at which one supports the main argument. China's Belt and Road Initiative has been a resounding success. Author didn't say it's a resounding success. He pointed to the negatives. So this is not the right answer. The World Bank and other Western lenders are more effective in providing aid to developing countries than China's Belt and Road Initiative. He didn't say that. He said China in the Belt and Road Initiative has given more to than the World Bank and other lenders combined. It doesn't support his argument, therefore. China's lending practices through the Belt and Road Initiative have led to a debt crisis in many developing countries. True. It goes in line with what the author is saying. Majority of developing countries that have received loans from China through the Belt and Road Initiatives are satisfied. So this also does not align. He says that those countries are unhappy, so China is losing influence. So the option which supports or goes in line with what the author is saying is option C.